Well, ladies and gentlemen. As you guys can tell by the title of this video, this is some of the top lures from the Bassmaster Classic of this year. This year I made a prediction video just like I did last year, and I got some of it absolutely on the dot correct, and some of it I got completely wrong. So let's go ahead and go through what I got right and what I got wrong. So first we're going to go with what I got wrong, because it was the number of wrong things versus right things is pretty different. There's a big difference. The biggest thing that I got wrong was the size of the big fish that was going to be caught. No offense to him or anything, but I guess I might have just given him too much credit on the big fish side of it. I'm pretty sure the biggest fish that was caught was only 6'2", which, that's a whole 1 pound bigger than my personal best. But when you're put on a river system that is known for having big fish in it, I really would have thought that there had been some bigger ones. Whatever. It was on the tougher side of conditions, I do understand that, but everybody knows that the Tennessee River does fish better when it's colder. I got a lot of things right when it came to that, but the smallmouth side of it was something that I got really wrong. I was really expecting that smallmouth were going to be a little bit more prominent in this classic, but they really weren't. I'm pretty sure that the guy who won it was Haute de Faux. I'm pretty sure all he caught was largemouth. He might have caught a few smallmouth. I feel like I remember seeing him holding a smallmouth on like the first day. Most of the fish that he caught was largemouth. Most of the fish that everybody caught was largemouth. There was a few smallmouth mixed in, but mostly it was largemouth. The biggest fish was a largemouth. It was 6'2", I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. That fish, I tried and looked around through all of Bassmaster website, on their Facebook, on their YouTube, and everything. I could not figure out who caught it or what it was caught on. I just couldn't. I don't know who caught the biggest fish, and I don't know what it was caught on. I said that the biggest fish was probably going to be caught on a jig. I don't even know if that was right, because I can't even find it. I tell you what, Bassmaster website is so messed up that I couldn't even get around on it. The Wi-Fi is already not good because of the rain that we're having right now. And the Bassmaster magazine website is just making it a whole lot worse. I end up getting mad and just turning it off and just going to go through this video without it. So I don't know who caught it. I don't know what it was caught on. But all I know that it was, I think, around 6'2". So that's all I can say with that. Baits that I mentioned in that video, I got pretty much all of them right. The only two baits that I mentioned, they were wild cards, which does mean that they could work, but they probably wouldn't, was a big worm and an Alabama rig. As far as I know, nobody threw that anywhere near that lake at all. As far as I know, nobody threw an Alabama rig and nobody threw a big worm. I didn't see anybody throwing them. It doesn't mean there wasn't somebody who tried. I'm sure somebody did, but I never seen it. So, baits that I did say was chatterbait, crankbait, jig, jerkbait, and crankbait. Those were pretty much the whole top 10 was filled with people using those baits. So we're going to go through now. I'm not going to say who caught what bait, what fish on what bait, because I can't remember that much. My brain doesn't work that well. But I do know that one of my guys that I picked 4 guys, Jordan Lee, Jacob Wheeler, I picked Kevin Van Dam, and who was the other one I picked? Wesley Strader. Wesley Strader, I think, finished like 20th, and Jacob Wheeler actually finished 2nd. Now, here's what happened during the Classic weigh-in. Me and my mom were sitting watching NASCAR, hoping that Kyle Busch was going to win. He actually did, which was awesome, but Jacob Wheeler was the last person to weigh in, as far as what my phone was saying anyway. He was the last person to weigh in. So we're sitting there, and I'm on Bassmaster.com trying to figure out who's winning and who's going to win the Classic. It basically came down to Haute de Faux and Jacob Wheeler from what I've seen. And I was really hoping that Jacob Wheeler would win the Classic and then Kyle Busch would win the race. That would be awesome. That'd be what happens in a perfect world. But of course the world ain't perfect, and that didn't happen. Jacob Wheeler ended up getting 2nd place, and Kyle Busch ended up winning the race, so at least one good thing came out of it. But I got to thinking about something. You know, I picked 4 people out of what was the starting day, like 120 people or something like that. And then it got cut down to like 50, and then it got cut down to 25. So I think that having a person that I picked out of 4 people out of the whole fleet of people that were there fishing that tournament, I think that having one guy that finished second out of all them people that I could have picked, I mean, I think it's pretty good. I honestly did not think Octafo could win. The reason why is it just normally doesn't work out that way for a lot of people who go to these places that are their home lake. You know, some people go to these lakes and do really well. I really didn't think he'd do that well. That's why I didn't pick him, but he ended up winning. So congratulations to him if somehow you watch this video. But the baits that he caught the fish on, I have most of the baits up here. I have pretty much the only baits. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 baits up here on the table. And all these baits were very prominent. They were seen a lot during the Classic. And these were the baits that like the whole top 10 used and stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and go through them. Now, one of the baits that Wesley Strader was throwing, and I've seen a few other people throwing, was a white and chartreuse gold blade spinnerbait. He threw that a lot. Everybody knows, if you know who Wesley Strader is, he is well known in the spinnerbait and flipping game. He throws spinnerbaits and flipping jigs all the time. And he was throwing a white and chartreuse gold blade spinnerbait. I think he ended up finishing like 23rd or something like that. I want to say he's like 22nd, 20th, something around there. But he was using, most of the time he was using one of those guys right there. Another bait that was very, very, very well known throughout the Classic, and this was something that I actually seen, I think day 2, I watched a short video that Bassmaster posted, and it showed somebody who was boat flipping a bass, and I could see a red square bill crankbait shoved down that bass's throat. And I seen that, and I was like, I'm getting at least one bait, right? And I was right, a red square bill. Now, if you go back, I went back and watched the video on my phone. If you go back, I said that a square bill, some colors, I didn't really know what colors were going to be working, but I really thought that a red crawl-colored square bill was going to work well. Everybody who knows how to bass fish knows that red square bills, for some weird reason, excel super well during the early spring. And evidently they all knew it too, because a lot of people were throwing red square bill crankbaits like this. This is an H2O Express red crawl crankbait. Jacob Wheeler, one of the guys that I was hoping to win, he finished second place. He was using one of these, and he was actually the guy that I seen throwing them on day 1, or actually day 2. A red square bill crankbait was one thing that a lot of people threw. Another bait that I did not mention in my Classic predictions video, because I really didn't think it'd be that prominent, was a lipless crankbait. And believe it or not, lipless crankbait was one of the baits that Jacob Wheeler and Mark Daniels Jr. used a lot of. Now, obviously, this is not the color that they used. If you watched the Bassmaster Classic, or if you've seen any pictures from it, they used crawl-colored lipless crankbaits. I do not have any crawl-colored lipless crankbaits. The only one I ever had, I ended up turning into a Christmas ornament, and it's in the box that has the Christmas tree and everything else in it. Because I just never used it. But this here is basically what they used. It's a Bill Lewis rattle trap. I think this is, I want to say this is like an off-brand rattle trap. I don't remember what brand it is. It doesn't say. But they were using like brown crawl and red crawl colored lipless crankbaits. So it goes right back to what I was saying with the square bill. Red crawl colored lipless crankbaits worked. So there's another bait. That one there I did not mention in the video because, like I said, I didn't think it'd work. Another thing that I mentioned a lot in my video was the big fish, and a lot of the fish were going to come out of medium depth water, not like 20 foot deep, not 5 foot deep, somewhere in that middle. And if you watched it, a lot of people were throwing about maybe 10, 20 feet off the bank and fishing that middle area. And another bait that was very well known was the Rapala DT6 and DT4. Now, I don't have any Rapala DT crankbaits because the only Rapala crankbaits I've ever bought sucked. And I hate throwing Rapala crankbaits. Nothing personal, well, I mean, kind of something personal, but I just don't like them. They never run right for me. I've used the line that they recommend on the packaging. and it just never works. I don't like Rapala crankbaits, but I have something a lot similar to the Rapala crankbait they were using, and that is a Strike King Series 4. This is probably one of my favorite medium diving crankbaits. Another crankbait that was very well known throughout the day was, throughout the classic, was a shallow running square bill in a shad pattern. I believe it was Brandon Polinick who was throwing. It was a Rapala Brat, I think is what it's called, something like that. It's a kind of a weird name for a crankbait, but it was a short, fat square bill with a short, more of a vertical than a horizontal bill. Like if you see this one here, it's more of a horizontal bill, and this one here is more of a vertical. And that was a well-known bait as well. And during the classic, it caught a lot of fish. This one here is an H2O Express wake bait, but it doesn't really wake all that well. It actually dives to about a foot deep. Now I have a crankbait, and it's not over here. It's actually over in my room. It's on my keys. And that was one of the baits that looked almost exactly like the crankbaits they were using. It's an Excalibur spitting image little wake bait style shallow running crankbait, and that was a style of bait that was used a lot as well. But I have one just like it. This one here is a 1.5 2 foot diving crankbait. Was a pretty prominent bait. Now another bait that I mentioned during my prediction video was a jerk bait. Now obviously I don't like throwing jerk baits. I never have. I think I've only caught 2 fish on a jerk bait, and they were both actually cranking it like a crankbait. I wasn't even using a jerk bait the way it's supposed to be used. But a jerk bait was a pretty good producer for a guy by the name of Roy Hawk. He has been on the classic trail, or in the Bassmaster trail, for a while. He placed, I want to say he placed like 7th or 8th, and he used a jerkbait, a red lipless crankbait, and he also used a football jig. Now, I don't have a football jig up here. I have a flipping jig, and the reason why is Mike Iaconelli and a couple other people were all throwing flipping jigs. They caught a lot of their fish on flipping jigs and crankbaits. Mike Iaconelli did. I know another guy did. I can't remember his name. But Mike Iaconelli, I watched a lot of the videos of him fishing. He was throwing a Rapala DT6 in, I think he was throwing it in a brown crawl, and he was also throwing a color called, what was that, Caribbean shad, I think is what it is. It's basically like a citrus shad. It's got like chartreuse and blue. But he was also throwing a jig sort of like this one here with a beaver style bait. Now this beaver style bait was not in the classic. If it was, I would be freaking out right now. But this is the Doc Sur Company flip out. They were all throwing, the people who were throwing a jig were all throwing colors very similar, something along the lines of an Okeechobee crawl, and also something along the lines of just a plain green pumpkin. This color here is called black, blue, olive. It's black, blue, and olive, obviously. That's kind of the name of the color. But something I did notice was a very, very patternable color for the trailer was Okeechobee crawl, which is what this color here is. It's got the little blue arms with the green pumpkin. That was one of the main trailers that people were throwing on the back of a jig, was an Okeechobee crawl colored jig trailer. Oops, almost dropped it. But jig was a very well-known bait as well. But on the final day was dominated by people throwing chatterbaits. Now, if you go back in time, back to March 4th, I believe is when I posted that video, March 4th or 5th, when I posted my predictions video, I mentioned that a chatterbait could be a well-used bait. It could be something that people throw a lot of. Now, it's not this exact chatterbait. This is a Strike King Rage Blade chatterbait. It absolutely sucks. I hate it, but I still use it because it could catch a big fish. But the 2 colors of chatterbaits that were used a lot was the green pumpkin, just like this, with a green pumpkin crawl on it. This one here is a mud crawler with the little red accents. This one here is just kind of something I had put together in my tackle box. It's the only green pumpkin chatterbait I have. But, the baits, I can't, kind of a disclaimer that's already 3/4 of the way through the video. Most of these baits are not colored exactly the same, and most of these baits are not the exact same bait, because I don't own every bait in the world, and some of the baits I don't even like the DT6. I don't like Rapala crankbaits. I also don't like jerkbaits. That's why I just grabbed a random 110 size jerkbait, and that's what that guy was using. You know, some of my baits, like the Doc's Lure Company flip out that I have on here, you know, I have my own lure company. I'm not going to go and promote other lure companies' baits. That's just not what I'm going to do. But I use in the same color that guy was using, and it's basically the same style profile of bait, just a little bit different. Anyway, sorry about that. Get back into it. Haute de Faux on the final day, something that I did not even think about because I'm stupid and didn't do enough research on the Tennessee River. He was throwing a chartreuse and white chatterbait with a soft plastic trailer. I don't remember what it was called. Can't remember. It was some sort of a swim bait. But he was actually throwing them around docks. Now, if I had done my research like any normal person would have done, one second, I would have known that there was a lot of docks on this stretch of the river, and I would have put that into perspective. I would have said that docks probably would have been a lot more prominent, which they were. On the final day, Haute de Faux ended up coming in with a white and chartreuse chatterbait and destroying the bass around the docks. So congratulations to Haute de Faux. Congratulations to all the competitors who made it to the final day and made some money off of it. Wish that, you know, Doc's Lure Company baits could have been there. That'd be pretty cool. But anyway, so thank you guys for watching. Once again, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you have not already. If you want to purchase any of the Doc's Lure Company baits in this video, even though I think there's only 2 or 3, let me know down in the email in the description. And leave your comments on what you thought of the Classic. Did you think it was a good one, or did you think that it could have been better? I personally think it could have been a lot better. I think they should have went somewhere in Texas. And if they don't go somewhere in Texas next year, I will be kind of disappointed. I think they ought to go somewhere down in Texas, like on Fork or Falcon, you know, Toledo Bend, Amistad. I think that any of those lakes would be awesome. I think if they also did one on Okeechobee, I think that would be pretty cool. Another lake that could possibly be a really good one for the Classic would be Chickamauga or Clear Lake. That would be a really cool Classic. I think that the Bassmaster people need to start thinking more on the big fish side of it, because us as bass fishermen that watch bass fishing tournaments, we want to see big fish, not a bunch of, you know, 2 and 3 pounders on the final day of Bassmaster Classic. We want to see big fish. So, you know, I think that it would be smart of Bassmaster to book the next one in like Texas or California or Florida, somewhere where people can come in with 10 and 12 pound bass on an everyday basis. You know, I think that would be a wise decision of them. And I think not only would it be a wise decision of them, but it would also be a good experience for all the viewers and the fishermen as well. You know, wouldn't that be great to catch a 10 pounder during the Bassmaster Classic? I think that'd be awesome. And it'd be awesome to watch as well. But anyway, thank you guys for watching once again, and yeah, bye.